Hi, I'm Danny Lipford.
And I'm Chelsea Lipford-Wolf.
Thanks for watching this episode of Today's Homeowner here on YouTube. And don't forget to leave us a like and a comment.
And be sure to share with a friend, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you get notified of new videos.
Thanks and enjoy the show.
Whether you're dealing with the aftermath of a hurricane like this or a smaller catastrophe at your own home, this week we'll show you how to put all the pieces back together the right way.
Today's Homeowner with Danny Lipford, the voice of home improvement, with projects, tips, and ideas to help you improve your home.
When Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast, nobody could imagine the amount of devastation that would be caused by the most expensive storm to ever hit the United States. Now this week we're going to look at a lot of the rebuilding efforts and kind of explore why some houses did real well and others not so well. Also, there's millions of dollars spent every year on more minor catastrophes around the home, such as dishwashers overflowing or ruptured washing machine hoses and other types of things that cause water or wind damage, much like they're dealing with here on the Gulf Coast. We'll look at the right way to put everything back together and different building products and building techniques to build a stronger home. Stay with us. This week we're in an area called Pass Christian, Mississippi, which experienced a good bit of damage from Hurricane Katrina. Not only from wind damage, but a large storm surge that came into this neighborhood and actually was over 8 feet tall where I'm standing. Now outside it's already been pressure washed and looks a lot better. Inside looks pretty bad. Can you imagine 8 foot of water in a house like this? You can see the water line right in here, and all of the drywall has been wet, all of the insulation inside the walls have been wet, and definitely all of that will have to be torn out. Can the house be saved? Without a doubt. The foundation's in good shape, and this home really isn't as old as some of the other houses in this area, and once everything is removed, it can be rebuilt. But just look at some of the things they're having to deal with here. The mud that settled down in the bottom of the where the water came in and on the floor itself, and you can see the problems with the countertop, and all of this will have to be completely removed. Now it's been several weeks since the hurricane hit, and in the weeks that followed that, of course, all of the walls were wet and creating a lot of mold and mildew. You can see in areas like this how the mold and mildew is really starting to grow. That will be the major concern. Now earlier this morning we talked with another homeowner that experienced this same kind of damage, but it's a little further along on the repairs. Mary Catherine Ward's home was also flooded, but with the help of her son and a local contractor, she's already preparing to rebuild.
When we first came back, it was about 4 days after the storm, and my first thought was I'm glad she had flood insurance because clearly the water line was a good 7-8 feet up in the house.
When I came back, it looked terrible, and I was upset about it, but I called the builder, and we got working Monday morning.
We decided the sheetrock and the carpeting needed to leave because they were holding water, and we had spoken to some people, and they indicated that it would probably never dry out, and there would be a mold problem, and in fact that it would even affect the studs, the woodwork in the house, and everything else. So we decided to take out the carpeting and the sheetrock. And just start from there.
There's enough here that everyone who's away, all they do is call and say, get me back, get me back. I'll rent a room from you when you restore your house. So we're going to have a big party when we all get back.
The Wards have made a good start, but to get a few more details on how to deal with the effects of water damage, I had a chat with mold remediation expert and local resident Rimmer Covington at a home where Katrina's storm surge reached over 20 feet.
Be careful, Danny.
Yeah, this one's a mess. Now, this is exactly the way it was the morning after the storm?
That's right. Exactly the way it was. Mother Nature cleaned it out.
So no furniture or anything?
No furniture. Some folks had bought the home, and a month later, Hurricane Katrina came and just destroyed it.
Oh, that's some bad luck. I tell you, how do you even approach something like this in order to get it back to a safe environment? And I guess whatever guidelines that you use for this would be similar if you had, say, a burst washing machine hose that caused a lot of flooding.
Right. You have to stop the water.
Okay.
Dry the moisture up so that there is no mold growth, and then you can proceed with your repairs.
Okay. And I know something like this where you have you know, carpet. Of course, this is completely gone, but
Yep.
I guess in some situations you can pull the carpet out of there, and if you dry it quick enough, it may even be able to save it.
Possibly, but in this case, this is saltwater flooding.
Okay.
And the salt water brings with it salt crystals, which absorb moisture. So
Okay.
you have to remove the construction materials that soaked up the saltwater crystals in the salt
Okay,
water.
I got you. Okay. Now, obviously, the water got up this high. I mean, that's like 10, 11 feet off the floor. And of course, we're already 10 foot up off the ground with this style house. So you had that much water. I guess all of the drywall in this house has to come out.
That is true. All the drywall will have to come out of this house. It'll be taken down to bare studs so that they're clean like this. Once the facility is completely dry, then wherever you have residual mold growth, it will be completely removed or treated in some fashion with a pressure washer. In this open air circumstance, that would work well. And then tested, of course, so that you can establish that there isn't any mold
And
problem.
keeping it real dry after the windows are replaced in here, I guess a dehumidifier would be a great idea to just pull as much moisture out of it as you can.
Yes, yes.
We're seeing a lot of real major work, but let's take something a little simpler now with our simple solution.
It's time for this week's Simple Solution from home repair expert Joe Truini.
There's no way around it. If you're remodeling inside your home, you're gonna create some dust. The secret is to keep that dust in the room you're working in and not allow it to sneak in to the adjacent.
Well, the most effective way to keep the dust in the room you're working and not blowing all through the house is to cover all doorways with sheets of plastic. This is 6 mil plastic, which is thick enough not to tear easily, and plus you can reuse it. But instead of taping it up, I'm going to use a staple gun because tape will eventually loosen up when dust gets behind it and it'll fall down. But the trick here is to take a staple gun and tape a small popsicle stick, just a little ice cream stick right on the bottom side. And what that's going to do is prevent the staple from going all the way in, so it'll be really easy to remove later, and then you can reuse the plastic. Okay, hold it up a little bit.
That should do it.
Right there. If you look right here, you can see that the staple is sticking up about 1/8 of an inch, so it'll make it really easy to remove it later, and then you can reuse this plastic.
Yeah, this works great, and just a little bit of plastic around an opening like this will save you a lot of cleanup time in the end. In a catastrophic event like a hurricane, the storm surge and the flooding that follows that can cause a tremendous amount of damage. We're in an area now that received some of the highest recorded winds during Hurricane Katrina, and we talked to a homeowner that actually rode out the storm in this house. Mark Ashley is a retired Navy commander. His brush with Katrina was much closer than he had intended, and one he won't soon forget. Mark, it's truly hard to believe that anyone could sit through the storm in a house like this. Tell us the story.
Well, it certainly wasn't by choice. I was late taking a boat across to Mobile Bay. Family had already evacuated. By the time I got back and got just a couple hours sleep, the storm was already starting and couldn't leave. So initially, it was felt I was fortunate to be there because I was able to put some buckets under the leaky roof and move some stuff around. But as the storm got worse and worse, and it finally, when it got up to my waist, I decided I'm not so fortunate anymore.
Great. And sounds, I assume that the building was creaking and making all kinds of sounds?
It was. Other folks talk about just the horrendous loud noise. I frankly didn't have that sensation. I think I was busy worrying about other things.
Sure,
so I
I
heard
can
a lot
see
of
where you
strange
were, yeah.
noises, but it wasn't loud.
Now when everything started getting up waist deep for you here, I guess the next place heading up the stairs, there's not much really left of your stairs now.
Well, it was, and this was a central stairwell and went up to the second floor. I'd always heard in the central piece of the house was the most, under a door frame was the safest place to stay.
Right.
So that's where I went and watched the water come up a little bit more. At some point, when the side of the stairwell started to buckle, and that was when I was hearing some noise from that buckling, I said, well, this is going to go fairly quickly, and I don't know where it's going to go. So I went on up into the second floor, and about that time, just looked around and saw this whole half of the house just almost explode. And I went away, and now I'm standing in a hallway looking out at the storm.
Boy. And you can see the water now, but I guess before your view of the water was limited because of what used to be several houses
There were about 8 houses between me and the beach. Now, when I did look out, I could only see as far as that next slab. I couldn't see past that because of the rain. But I did see that house, and it was collapsed, and that and my house collapsed and told me I wasn't where I needed to be. The only place I could go was back up into my daughter's Amy's room, and ended up staying the rest of the time there.
Boy.
Just praying and hoping that it wasn't going to get that part too.
Boy, that's amazing. I tell you, I know you wouldn't do it again in any case at all with a storm coming.
Oh, heck no.
Well, now, I know the house is about 10 years old, and the garage and breezeway is much newer than that, and it looked like it held together pretty good. But the original house being 10 years old, I noticed they used some of the hurricane straps and some of the clips, and that's one of the things that they started requiring you to use on a lot of the homes that were built at that time to try to hold everything together. But nowadays, there's other ways that you can make a house even stronger. Randy Shackelford is a research engineer for a company that manufactures structural connectors for the building industry. He explains how the business of reinforcing homes is evolving.
The concept is that the wind is pulling on the top of the roof. You've got roof uplift, and everyone's heard of that. So it's been for a long time where people connect the roof to the top plate. But what you really need to do is connect that all the way down. So it all starts at the top, where you fasten the roof sheathing to the roof framing. Then the roof framing is connected to the top plate, and then everywhere there's a joint on there, there's a connection together. So we've got the top plate connected to the stud, then we come down the stud is connected to the bottom plate, and then we've got a nut and extra large washer down here connecting the bottom plate to the foundation. So what we have is a continuous load path or a chain, and you want all the length in that chain connected together from the roof down to the bottom. And the great thing about that is you can buy all the material to do that for about $200 for a modest size house. Unfortunately, one of the best ways to learn is when a disaster strikes. The engineers go out and they look at the damage, and we see what happened. They try and figure out what happened, and then they take that knowledge back and incorporate it into building codes. It's happened after earthquakes in California, after Hurricane Andrew in Florida, and I'm sure the same thing is going to happen here in the Gulf Coast, where we'll take what we saw and incorporate into improvements in both wind and flood resistance.
After our Best New Product segment, we'll return to the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Let's join Danny at the Home Center to check out this week's best new product.
One of the biggest problems we're seeing in a lot of the homes we're looking at this week is excessive mold growth. Now, mold is usually a result of traditional wallboard getting wet and then the paper that surrounds the wallboard providing the food that mold needs in order for it to continue to grow. Now, what if you had a wallboard that was completely paperless? Well, it's finally available from Georgia Pacific, and it's called Dense Armor Plus. Now, it's made pretty much like a traditional piece of gypsum wallboard, except that it has extra glass fibers to fortify and strengthen the sheet itself, and the same glass fibers over the outside surface to provide that inorganic coating that will not promote any mold growth. Now, it installs pretty much like any other wallboard. It finishes like wallboard, and once it's painted, no one would ever know that you put something different than traditional wallboard. So you might think about this when you're remodeling or building a home in any moisture subject areas inside your home, such as a bathroom or kitchen. This week, we're along the Gulf Coast looking at some of the damage that was caused by Hurricane Katrina. Now, we've seen a tremendous amount of damage where houses were washed completely off of their foundations, others destroyed by the high winds. But one thing that we've seen in almost every house we've looked at is some type of roof damage, particularly blown shingles like we have on this structure. Now, so many times you have minor work like this that could be minimized if the shingles were installed properly. Almost every manufacturer of asphalt shingles requires a minimum of 4 fasteners per shingle. These nails are generally driven below the self-sealing strip and above the overlap point, with 1 near each tab notch and 1 near each edge. In areas that are subject to high winds, 2 extra nails are recommended for a total of 6 nails in each shingle or 2 nails in each tab. It's also important that the nails be driven down flush with the shingle surface, but not so deep that the shingle is damaged. Shingles are just one product used to seal the envelope of your home. Another that you should consider is house wrap.
When I talk to consumers, what I tell them all the time is you have to look at the key properties of a house wrap. Its ability to stop air, stop water, but most importantly and the most critical factor is its ability to allow moisture vapor to pass through the product. Now, many people say, how does that happen? The way the Tyvek is made is you have layer upon layer upon layer of these fibers. They're then bonded together with heat and pressure. If we look at what we're trying to control, which is water, air, and moisture vapor, if we assimilate those to their molecule size, to like a quarter, a nickel, and a dime, the quarter is going to be water, the nickel is going to be air, the dime is going to be moisture vapor. We manufacture Tyvek in such a way that the quarters and nickels cannot pass through the material, yet the dimes can pass through freely. That is why if a wall were to get wet, it has the capacity to dry through the moisture vapor passing through the product.
This is another important consideration in protecting the envelope of your home, especially in a severe storm situation. Now, many window manufacturers now offer windows with impact-resistant glass. At first glance, these windows look like any other, but what sets them apart is how they perform. In this model, called the Stormbreaker Plus, the key difference is the pane of laminated glass formed by sandwiching a piece of heavy plastic between two pieces of double-strength glass. Then the pane is combined with another piece of double-strength tempered glass to form one insulated unit that rests in a heavy-duty vinyl sash that's reinforced with steel. I got the chance to see their strength firsthand, but the real testing takes place in the lab. Traveling at 50 feet per second, this 9-foot-long 2x4 shatters the glass but doesn't break through it. Repeated shots have similar results. More testing highlights the real value of these windows because even in this damaged state, they continue to protect the interior of a home and its contents from the effects of wind and water. Next, around the yard.
Let's head outside for Around the Yard with lawn and garden expert Tricia Craven-Worley.
Tricia, when I think of African violets, I always think of them as being a very delicate plant.
Oh, they are delicate, and I just love them, how velvety they look.
Oh yeah, they're real pretty.
You know, in the past we've talked about not getting water on the plants because the leaves have all of these little nice furry things. But today I'm talking about how to make more of these beautiful plants.
Oh, is that right? You can make them duplicate themselves,
Yes,
huh?
you can propagate them. There are quite a few plants that you can do that with, and this is one of them. What I'm going to start with is use a sterilized knife. It's very important that you're not transferring any kind of germs of any sort from one plant to another. So always make sure you wash the knife first. And then I'm going to find a healthy leaf, and I'm going to cut way down there, okay? And I've just cut, as you can see, part of the stem.
I see.
Now, there are some wonderful products out, and this is simply a rooting hormone.
Oh, I see.
And that's the next step, is that you want to dip that hormone or dip the leaf into that hormone and make sure that it really cakes around there.
I see.
All right? And then what I do, I think there are lots of other ways to do it, but what I like to do is I just stick it through paper, and again, I'm keeping the top part dry, and I'm just going to put it in water. Now what's going to happen is over time, that stem will begin to show little roots. And as soon as they look strong enough, I'm going to transplant it to some nice soil.
Sounds easy. I've lived on the Gulf Coast my whole life and have been through a few hurricanes. Even that didn't prepare me for the amount of damage that we found here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I also expected to talk with a number of homeowners that were very depressed and overwhelmed by this situation. What I found were some of the most optimistic people I had ever met. Folks like homeowner Mark Ashley, who weathered the storm in what remained of his home. Mary Catherine Ward and her son Richard, who are determined to rebuild a home that's full of family history. And Rimmer Covington, who took time away from his own gutted home to share with us his expertise on fighting mold. We even discovered a civic group meeting on the sidewalk because there was nowhere else to meet. Thanks to the generosity of our sponsors, we were able to provide them with some of the tools necessary to help with the rebuilding of their community. They in turn shared with us their bright outlook and incredible enthusiasm. Here in Pass Christian, only a few waterfront structures like this concrete home survived the storm, but the spirit of the people is thriving. There are a lot of bright spots, and with the amount of assistance that's pouring in from all over this great country, it won't be long, this community will be back on its feet again. Thanks for being with us. I'm Danny Lipford.
Thanks for watching this episode of Today's Homeowner. And don't forget to like, comment, and hit the bell icon so that you'll be notified of new videos.
And be sure to click around and watch some more videos while you're here.